Advisory Committee presentation. Dr. Lugo.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board and cabinet. Thank you very much for having me here today. Oops. Just need to pull up the presentation here. Here we are. So the purpose today is just to provide you an update with the progress of our advisory committee to the governing board for the principal and teacher evaluation. Just as a reminder, the purpose set forth by the governing board was to look at the state model and make sure that we were in compliance and had a fair and equitable model that also accelerates student achievement. And at every meeting that we have, we review that purpose. I just want to take a moment to reflect on the members of the committee. We have 40 members that participated and are currently participating. The people who are asterisks are those who participated last year but are not continuing on this year for one reason or another. So I'm just going to kind of flip through these slides. I cannot say enough about the quality and the dedication of these teachers and administrators who are in the committee and all that they have to offer. I'm very, very proud to facilitate this group. So here you can see the meeting dates. The past dates we have met 8 times thus far and covered a broad range of topics. Also, the dates were specifically set out to follow the state task force meetings so that updates could be provided at each of our evaluation meetings. Now, you'll notice that on the bottom, the framework for the actual adoption wasn't submitted till April 25th. So we really have only had a couple of meetings that we really had something in our hands to go by. We had lots of updates and lots of, well, we think we're going here, but we didn't, but we had lots and lots of things to do. So this is a rough guesstimate. It is not Dr. Spiller driven on percentages. It's kind of my feeling of where the committee is at, both on the teacher evaluation tool and on the principal tool. So you'll see there are lots of similarities between the two because they're kind of working in tandem. The teacher tool kind of plays a forefront first, and then we do some updates on the principal tool. So together we set the process, and I'll go into each one of these in more detail, but you'll see that we've set the process, we elicited site feedback, we researched best practices, we compared both tools with the statute and compared both tools with the framework and the draft framework. And then we began the process of aligning those tools, our current tools, which are really process-driven. They're driven around standards for teaching and learning and standards for leadership, and aligning those tools with the framework. Then coming up right now, we are in the design process of the student achievement model, which Dr. Spiller feels like she has a really good handle on where we can go with working on the student achievement model, but it has yet to be presented to the committee. The committee had it on our agenda last time, but we had so much to do, so it's been pushed to our next meeting. And then just within the last couple of weeks, we received notification from the State Department that we need to report performance levels to the federal government, and so we need to determine our performance criteria for those levels.
Dr. Lugo?
Yeah.
On that slide where it says current status update and there's the percentages, what does 100% mean, 50% mean? I don't think I really get what that means.
Okay, it means Dr. Susan Lugo's interpretation of where we're at. So
100%
means we're done and we're not going to go back and rehash and re-go over what the process is. And I'll share with you a little bit about that. 98% on best practices. I'd like to say 100% because we spent lots and lots of hours reading and getting up to speed on what best practices are.
Yeah.
Yet you want to leave that 2% if something new comes out and you want to be able to consider it. 50% in my framework was we have established some ideas, some criteria, yet we really need to, as a group, put some pen to paper and do some exploration there.
Got it.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, it's
No,
it's not, I always use the Dr. Spiller test on that one. Okay, so one of the first, she's back there giggling. One of the first things was status report on the process. You've seen this wheel a number of times. We use the interest-based process. Many of us are familiar with it. And so part of the process is the story or the what. So we've really looked at Senate Bill 1040, which is now Arizona Revised Statute 203, and laid that foundation of what, and the open meeting law, because that's part of our governing board policy, is to make sure everybody's aware of that. We talked about the interests of different people who were in the room and what their expectations were, which was very much aligned to what the governing board put out as our purpose. We developed some standards, and it's really straight from the purpose statement. It needs to be fair, it needs to be equitable, it needs to be legal, it needs to be within compliance, and it needs to accelerate student achievement. And then right now we're in the process of looking at options and weighing our options, and then we'll be evaluating how well those options meet the standards, and we're also exploring the idea of having a consultant look at our student achievement component to make sure that what we have is valid and reliable, just to double check our work. And then going for commitment, and we use a consensus process for that. So the next portion was to look at eliciting site feedback. I visited and reported back all the sites and departments. There were teachers and administrators in the room. What we did is, the first thing was read the law individually, and I read it to them and took questions, and we really worked with stickies and notes and took questions and concerns and comments, because this is a big change from our past practice. Then we broke into smaller groups of like grade levels and like areas. So the first grade teachers worked together, the ELD teachers worked together, the reading specialists, the teachers on assignment, and they shared their concerns and their questions, and they talked through those things, but those were also listed and documented. Then the next question we asked, because we wanted to get over that sometimes this is not fair mode, or I don't like this mode, to, okay, how can we move forward? And the question that we asked was, for your area, what do you feel, and I want to make sure I get it right, what do you feel would measure student growth for your position, and what is the benefit of that measurement, and what concerns you about using those measurements? And so we collected all that data from all the 9 schools, and in one of our meetings compiled the data in like groups, and we used that data to refer back to different parts of what we do. So we have that. Okay, and then the next part, I'll go through this really quickly. We looked at best practices, which we talked about. We looked at peer review articles. We looked at the value-added model, the growth model. There were different, what are they called, podcasts or vodcasts that were on the state website that I reviewed, and if people wanted to look at those as well. And as well as looking at different areas, interest groups, and what they were saying. So we looked at ASBA and ASA and AEAs. There's articles out there, and other district work. It was interesting when I was working with Dr. Spiller the other day, and she goes, Susan, you know, really, we've been studying this for about 10 years. And she said, I was just getting ready to throw away all my articles that she used for her dissertation. And I thought about that. It's, we're really growing over time. So it's exciting. So the next part is, what we're currently doing is aligning our process tools with the framework that was adopted. So there's different components of the framework that we had to do a crosswalk with, and we had different subgroups work on this. So we had one subgroup look at the Danielson model for teaching. And the Danielson model has 4 domains. And what was really exciting to see about that is our current SES, Standard Evaluation System for Teachers, is really based off the Danielson model. We have the 4 areas. We made a real light language changes so that they would be very clear and explicit. So when the State Department looked at it, they saw, oh yeah, instead of classroom environment, we changed it to class, I want to make sure I say it correctly, classroom management, and then there was, professional teaching and responsibility. So we really wanted to make sure there was a tight alignment, so there was no question there. But they actually, the people on the committee really did a crosswalk and labeled each area on our rubric with which area would it fall under. And we did the same thing with the INTAS standards. The INTAS standards, they have 10 standards for teaching and learning. And they're the Arizona Department of Education had recommended those. And so that group did a crosswalk and looked at our current teaching rubric and labeled each one, and to see, were we missing anything, were we covered, and they felt confident. And then for the ISLIC standards, those are the standards that govern our administrators and their leadership standards. And there are 6 standards there, and the same crosswalk was done. And it's really clear that even though our principal evaluation tool hasn't been updated that I know of very recently, they're very solidly built on those standards. So now the part that we're coming up with, we have lots and lots of work to do, and I know that there's the student achievement component. So I wanted to share with you 3 different samples that are actually in the framework and how we might want to move forward on looking at these. The first thing what we need to do is determine Group A and Group B teachers.
Before we get there,
Yep.
Dr. Lugo, can we go back one moment? When you do this process tools alignment, I guess there's I don't really understand what the 3 sections here are. Is this finding out how this framework aligns with what we already have in the qualitative components of the evaluation?
Yeah, what this is I use the term process of evaluation. So what the observer, let's say we're talking about teachers. Yeah. So let's say the principal comes in and what the look-fors are, as well as what they're looking for in the teaching of the lesson, what they're looking for in the preparation of the lesson, what they're looking for in classroom management, and what they're looking for that the teachers live up to their professional standards that they have. So that's kind of the process or a qualitative area. So with the
framework and 2 sets of standards, what's
the Danielson framework came out of the remember, because I know you were at many of the meetings that I was at as well, out of the early work from the ADE, their task framework, and they said they really wanted to utilize the Danielson model, which is a model for teaching and learning that has 4 domains or lenses to look at the teaching profession through. And so we wanted to make sure that we were in alignment, and what was very apparent is when we updated our standard evaluation system in 2006, we utilized, what's his name? I can picture him right in front of me.
Larry Daniels, we use
Daniels framework.
Okay, so the process piece or the qualitative piece, we're good.
We're good. We have some language changes that we made.
Yeah. Okay, got that. Okay, now I understand.
And then in the glossary, just so you know, because we wanted to make it very explicit, in the glossary area, or we call it the guidelines area, we actually referenced the standards so that teachers, when they look through, they can say, oh, let me go look at that INTAS standard or the administrator. We also